Hi, I'm Ryan. This is Hunter. We're here at Ringbrothers. Today we are talking all things hood hinges. We're going to do an install tutorial, go over some frequently asked questions, and give kind of the basic steps to getting our hood hinges aligned on your vehicle.
So for most of our builds, we have different types of hinges. We have both black anodized and natural. And then each of ours typically have a solid frame and then an airframe. The airframe has extra machining, typically more of like a skeletal look to it. They both function identically. Each of them are same in strength.
The one thing before we get started in this how-to video that I want to point out is that what we're doing here today with this Blazer is a universal basis for installing hinges on your vehicle. All of our hinges operate in essentially the same way, and most of the techniques that we're showing here today will be useful in your installation, but may not be specific to your exact vehicle.
So when you receive your hinges and you open the box, you'll find a set of hinges for the driver and passenger side. You'll find ball studs in a kit, and then you'll find a hardware kit, which is going to be including all the washers and bolts to secure the hinges to the inner fenders and the hood. On some cases, some of the hinges will also come with shims, which may or may not be required for your vehicle. If they come with it, we typically recommend starting with the shims on, but we'll show you when and why you might need shims or don't need shims. So one of the first steps in mounting the hinges is actually mounting the driver and passenger side to the inner fenders. Once that step is complete, then it's going to move on to measurements, and this is going to tell us if we need shims or need to modify something before we attach the hood. So one of the first processes you want to start with is actually measuring the bolt pattern of the hood, both in the rear positioning and in the front positioning, and we recommend writing that down. What that'll do is this will help when we go to measure the hinges to make sure everything is going to be roughly the right width, and if they're going to be way off, we'll know then if it's something we need to shim or change. So now that we got the hood measured, the next step is going to be measuring the hinges in the same pattern. So measure the rear and measure in the front. And after we get these two measurements and written down, the final step in our measurements is going to be closing the hinges. Once they're closed, we're going to do that same measurement as well. What this will tell us is if the hinges are pitched in any direction. So if this distance grows by a significant amount or shrinks by a significant amount, that'll tell us that the hinges from side to side are pitched in one way or the other. By doing it in the front too, the other measurement that it'll look for is whether or not the hinges are turned inside or outside. And those are all things that we want to make sure are square before we go to installing the hood. If we forget to do those steps, there's some pretty catastrophic things that can happen over time. For one, you could start blowing bearings by distributing the force incorrectly. And the other thing too is they could also bind the hinges. So if somebody goes to install them and they're not square, what you'll find is the arms of the hinge will actually create a scissoring effect and start rubbing against each other and cause some damage to the hinges that way too. So with all of the hinges on and measured and square, once those adjustments are made, the next step is going to be installing the gas strut. So there's a couple of key things to know when installing gas struts. This upper barrel part inside of here has got some grease and oil that help keep the seals in the bottom maintained. So when installing these, you want to make sure that you install them with the barrel above the rod part so that over time, those seals stay well maintained. There's two different types of ends when it comes to gas struts. These are the quick release ends, so without having to do anything, you'll actually be able to just kind of line them up, give them a good little pull, and they'll click right into place. Other ends will have a wire safety clip, and in order to install those, you have to start by removing the wire safety clip and then clipping it on and re-securing that safety clip.
A lot of people think there's something wrong with the gas strut when they try to squeeze it and they cannot do it. I cannot do it at 150 pounds only. We have much bigger ones. And also if I put all of my weight on that strut, I can't get it to move an inch. So just because they don't collapse does not mean there's something wrong with your strut. We get that a lot, and just trust the process, put them on your hinges, and we'll get you set up.
One thing to note when mounting either the hood or the hinges to the inner fenders is start with putting the bolt positions in the middle of each pocket. What that'll do is that should give you a good indicator right off the bat as far as like when you go to do your adjustments, which way you're gonna need to move stuff. So now that we've got the hinges on, one of the next things that we're gonna do is we're going to very carefully close the hood and watch both hinges.
Of course, what we're looking for is an even gap from the hood to the cowl, down the fender, and in this case on this Blazer across the front of the grille. So I've got the passenger side about where I want it to be. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen up the driver's side bolts here at the hood. I'm gonna use my body to kind of help keep the hood in position. With my hand at the bottom of the hood to protect the hood itself as well as the cowl and the fender. I'm just gonna break these just enough loose that I can slide them on the hinge. And what I need is I need to come forward just a little bit. So there I came forward maybe an eighth or so. And I'm gonna snug these up. They don't need to be super tight, just tight enough that it'll hold its position. And then we can carefully close the hood and take a look at our gaps. So what I can see here is that we came too far forward. Our gap is real big in the back. So one of the things that we can do is, because I didn't tighten that up all the way, I can slide this hood on those hinges and get it a lot closer to where I want to be. I like that. We should close now. That's about where we want to be.
So with these hinges on this installation, we were fortunate enough to not have to mess with the adjustment of the fender bracket. Everything seemed to lay down quite easily for us. However, in some cases, what you'll find is once you install the hinges, the rear of the hood will sometimes kick up. Quite often, there's about two main ways of adjusting that. The first, lower the rear of the hinges down because that will help get the hood down. The other option is if you run out of adjustment in the rear, is you can actually lift the front of the hinges because they're designed to close beyond what is necessary. So by lowering the rear and lifting the front, you're then rotating the hinge, which is gonna help seat the back of that hood, and again, still get you the adjustments you need for everything else.
One of the things I want to mention, when we install these hinges on one of the vehicles we're building, it takes a fair amount of time to get them adjusted correctly. I don't want you to get frustrated if it's taking a little bit longer than you think it should have to get your hinges adjusted appropriately. Once you have them adjusted like we do now on this Blazer, they will always go back to that position. You know, so many stock hinges, when you close the hood, you have to push on the back, you have to push in the front to get it to lock down. These, once you have it opening and closing how you want, that's how it will stay forever.
So if after this installation video you still have questions, feel free to give us a call. We are more than happy to help you through any of the individual circumstances that you might encounter specific to your builds.